Before we dive into tonight's haunting story, be sure to like and subscribe, or you may find yourself wondering if something is watching you. Hit that button, if you dare. It was my third year as a law enforcement officer, and I had seen more than my fair share of unsettling things, but nothing quite like the horrors that came from the old mental hospital on the edge of town. The place had been closed for years, its grim history buried in the dust of forgotten paperwork and whispered rumors. The building stood like a silent sentinel, its broken windows and rusted iron gates a permanent reminder of something dark. But that night, it was no longer just a relic of the past. It became the epicenter of a nightmare that I'll never forget. It all started with a call I received late one night, just past midnight. The radio crackled with the urgent voice of dispatch. Unit 13. We have a situation at the old psychiatric hospital. Reports of strange noises, lights flickering, and a disturbance in the building. We need you to investigate. I'd heard the stories before about patients who died under mysterious circumstances, of doctors who were rumored to have crossed ethical lines, but I never took them seriously. Old hospitals were always the setting for wild tales, the stuff of local legends. But when you're a cop, you don't have the luxury of believing in ghosts. So, I grabbed my flashlight, holstered my gun, and made my way to the place that had become nothing more than a haunted backdrop in our town's folklore. The air was thick and cold as I approached the decrepit hospital. The gate was hanging off its hinges, and the main entrance was boarded up, but not enough to stop someone from slipping through. The building loomed ahead, its silhouette jagged against the dark sky. The wind howled through the broken windows, carrying with it a sound that almost sounded like faint whispers, like the building itself was alive with the ghosts of its past. As I stepped inside, the floorboards creaked beneath my feet, and I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. The smell of mildew and decay filled the air, and the faint glow from my flashlight barely cut through the darkness. I moved forward, my senses on high alert, the hairs on the back of my neck prickling. There was no sign of anyone, no staff, no patients, just an eerie silence that made everything feel wrong. Then, I heard it. A door creaking opened somewhere in the distance. I paused, my heart skipping a beat. I wasn't alone. "Hello," I called out, my voice echoing off the cold walls. No response, just the distant sound of the door moving again. It wasn't natural, not the way a door would move under normal circumstances. It was as if someone or something was pushing it, just slightly, in a slow, deliberate way. I followed the sound, the beam of my flashlight bouncing off old cracked tiles and peeling wallpaper as I made my way through the hallway. The temperature seemed to drop even further, and the air felt heavier with every step. When I reached the end of the hall, the door in front of me was cracked open, just like the reports had said. But it wasn't just the door, it was the room behind it. I stepped inside cautiously, and as I did, the door slammed shut behind me. I spun around, my hand instinctively reaching for my radio, but before I could reach it, the lights flickered on, then off again, plunging me into darkness. I wasn't sure how long I stood there, trying to catch my breath, when I heard it, a low guttural sound from the far corner of the room. It wasn't human, not exactly. It was more like a distorted moan, a sound made from the depths of something dark and hungry. My flashlight flickered as I swung it toward the noise, revealing the source. It was a man, crouched low on the floor, his back arched in a way that should have been impossible. His eyes, wide and bloodshot, were staring directly at me, unblinking. His mouth was open, but no sound came out, just the occasional rasping breath. I felt my chest tighten, and panic surged through me. Something wasn't right about this man. The way he moved, the way his body twisted unnaturally, it was wrong. But then, in an instant, he stopped. His eyes narrowed, and for the first time, he spoke. "Get out." The words were raspy, slurred, but they hit me like a punch to the gut. I stepped back, my heart pounding in my chest, but before I could move, the man lunged at me. His hands, covered in sores and bruises, grabbed at my leg, pulling me to the ground. I fought him off, adrenaline kicking in as I tried to push him away, but his grip was unrelenting. He was strong, too strong for someone who looked as frail as he did. The only thing that saved me was the sudden sound of footsteps approaching from behind. I turned just as a figure appeared in the doorway, a tall, dark silhouette, its face obscured by the shadows. But then, the figure stepped into the light, and I gasped. It was a woman, dressed in an old nurse's uniform, her face pale and hollowed out, like she had been dead for years. Her eyes were empty sockets, and her skin was stretched tight across her skull. In her hands, she carried something, a syringe. She didn't speak, but her presence was enough to freeze me in place. The man, still clutching at my leg, seemed to recognize her. He let go, his eyes flickering toward her with a mixture of fear and reverence. Without a word, she knelt down beside me, her cold, lifeless fingers brushing my arm. Her touch was ice cold, as if it had been dipped in the frost of the grave. The room seemed to grow darker, and the temperature dropped even further. Then, just as suddenly as they had appeared, the man and the woman were gone. The door was wide open again, and I was left alone, my heart racing, my hands trembling. I stood up, trying to regain my composure, but something was off. The air was thick, suffocating. The hospital was alive with memories, with ghosts that refused to let go. I stumbled out of the room, my flashlight barely working. One had to get out of there. I had to leave before whatever was in that place came for me. But as I made my way back to the exit, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was following me. I turned around once, but the hallway was empty. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling. As I stepped out into the night, I looked back at the building one last time. The lights flickered once more in the windows, and for a split second, I thought I saw someone watching me from the top floor. But when I blinked, they were gone. The old hospital stood there, silent again, its secrets buried deep in the walls. But I knew better now. I knew the horrors that lay inside. The building wasn't empty. It was never empty. And whatever haunted those holes would never let go. The call came through at 2:30 a.m. The voice on the radio was tight, anxious. Unit 45, we've got an urgent situation at the old psychiatric hospital. Reports of noises, lights flickering. Something's not right. We need someone to check it out. I've been a law enforcement officer for over a decade, and I've dealt with a fair share of disturbances. But there's something about that hospital, something that makes even the bravest officers uneasy. It's been abandoned for years, ever since they closed it down after the scandal, the mistreatment, the patients who never left. The rumors surrounding it were enough to make you stay as far away from that place as possible. But this was my shift, and I was the one who had to answer the call. I grabbed my flashlight, checked my gear, and drove toward the hospital. The journey was quiet, save for the hum of my vehicle's engine. But the closer I got, the more I felt a growing sense of dread that seemed to gnaw at my bones. The place loomed in the distance, its broken windows staring out like empty eyes. The twisted iron gates, barely hanging on their hinges, looked like they hadn't been touched in years. The moment I stepped out of the car, the air felt different. It was cold, even for the middle of winter, and it carried a weight that made every step feel heavier. The building itself was like a beast waiting to awaken. The dark outline of the crumbling structure casting long, unnatural shadows across the grounds. I stood there for a moment, debating whether to call for backup, but there was no one else around. It was just me, alone, walking into a nightmare. I pushed open the gate with a creak that sounded far too loud for the still night, and the doors of the hospital were no better. As soon as I stepped inside, the smell hit me, an old, musty scent, mixed with the faint temps of something rotting. The silence was deafening. The kind of silence that presses down on you until it feels like it's crawling into your skin. I called out, my voice echoing down the hall. Hello? Anyone here? No response, just the sound of my own voice bouncing off the cracked, peeling walls. I moved down the hallway, flashlight swinging ahead of me. The beams of light cut through the thick darkness, but didn't reach far enough to make me feel safe. The flickering lights overhead cast erratic shadows that seemed to move on their own. And then I heard the first noise. A soft scraping sound, followed by a strange dragging, like something being pulled across the floor. My hand gripped my flashlight tighter, and I felt my heart beat faster. The sound was coming from one of the rooms ahead. The door was half open, the wood splintered and rotting. I approached carefully, trying to keep my breathing steady. But the closer I got, the heavier the air seemed. It was suffocating, cold, my skin prickled with unease. I stopped at the doorway, my breath catching in my throat. The room was dark, save for the light from my flashlight. But it was the figure I saw that made my stomach drop. A man was sitting in the middle of the room, hunched over, his back arched at an impossible angle. His skin was pale, his hair long and matted. But it was the eyes, their wide, unblinking stare, that made my heart freeze. His pupils were dilated, black holes that swallowed the light. His mouth was open, but no sound came from it. Just the odd, raspy gasps, like a breath that had been held too long. I backed away, instinct telling me to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I just stood there, frozen, as the man slowly turned his head toward me. The slow, jerky movement wasn't human, it was wrong. His voice came then, raspy and broken. Get out, ... It wasn't just his voice. There was something else. Something buried deep in the sound, a chorus of whispers, like a dozen voices layered beneath his own, all speaking at once. Get out. Get out. You don't belong here. I turned and bolted out of the room, my heart pounding in my chest. The sound of my footsteps echoed through the hall, but I couldn't get away fast enough. The whispers followed me, growing louder, more frantic. I reached the end of the hall and turned down another corridor, but the temperature had dropped even further. My breath formed thick clouds in the air, and I felt like I was being watched. I had to get out. I had to leave. I stumbled forward, my flashlight illuminating the path ahead. But then, something caught my eye. A door, far down the hallway. It was cracked open, just slightly. But there was something else, something in the shadows, a figure, standing still, watching me. It wasn't just a person, it was something more. The figure didn't move, but I could feel its presence pressing against me. Its eyes were empty, hollow. I tried to look away, but my body wouldn't listen. My feet were glued to the floor, my pulse hammered in my ears. I wanted to scream, but the sound wouldn't leave my throat. Then, the figure started to move. It shuffled forward, dragging its feet. The air thickened, suffocating me, and I was suddenly aware of every crack in the walls, every creak of the floor beneath me. The figure took a step, and I could feel the cold creeping into my bones. I bolted again, my breath ragged, and my flashlight shaking in my hand. I ran down the hallway, but the sounds of footsteps, the dragging, grew louder, closer. I glanced over my shoulder, but no one was there. Yet the sensation of being followed was inescapable. I reached the exit. I didn't even stop to think. I just threw the door open and sprinted out into the cold night. The chill in the air stung my skin, but it was a relief compared to the suffocating darkness inside the building. I didn't stop running until I was back in my car, the engine roaring to life as I sped away from the hospital. But as I glanced back in the rearview mirror, I saw something that made my stomach twist. The building, the lights, they were on, all of them, flickering in a rhythmic pattern, like someone was standing in every room, watching, waiting. The whispers hadn't stopped. They were still in my ears, still in my mind. I had escaped, yes, but whatever was in that hospital had followed me. It was still there, waiting for the next person to step inside, waiting for someone else to become part of its dark, twisted story. And I knew, deep down, that I'd never truly be free from it. Because something in that place, something ancient and hungry, had tasted me, and it wouldn't stop until it had me again. That hospital wasn't just abandoned, it was alive, and it was calling for me. The night air was thick with fog as I drove toward the old mental hospital, the one that everyone in town talked about, but no one dared to go near. It had been closed for years, abandoned by the staff after the scandal. The place was infamous for the horrific treatments and unexplainable events that had occurred within its walls. Even now, years after its closure, there were whispers about the building, how the screams of patients could still be heard at night, how some people who went inside never came out. And yet, I, a law enforcement officer for over a decade, had been called there to investigate a noise complaint. I should have known better. I should have turned the other way and called for backup. But something in my gut told me to go. Maybe it was the adrenaline of the job, or maybe it was the curiosity that gnawed at me every time I passed by that forsaken building. Whatever it was, I found myself standing at the entrance, the wind howling through the broken windows and rattling the rusted gates that barely held the structure in place. The gates were open, the hinges, long ago disintegrated into useless fragments. The doors to the hospital were barely standing, hanging crooked on their frames, like the building itself had been abandoned by life. The moment I stepped inside, I was greeted by an overwhelming sense of dread. The stench of decay and mold filled the air, and the silence was suffocating and naturally still. My flashlight barely cut through the darkness as I made my way through the hallway. Every step I took was echoed back at me, making the silence feel even thicker. I called out into the empty hallway, my voice sounding hollow and distant, but no answer came. It was just me, alone, standing in the heart of the nightmare. I hesitated but pressed on, my boots crunching on the dust-ridden floor. The walls around me were peeling, the paint long gone, and the air felt so thick that it seemed to hang, like the building was holding its breath. Then I heard it, a soft sound at first, a tapping. At first I thought it was a loose piece of metal hitting the floor in the breeze, or maybe just the wind playing tricks on my mind. But the tapping continued, slow and methodical. Tap, tap, tap. It wasn't random, it was deliberate. I moved down the corridor, toward the source of the sound. I reached the door to a large room, and the tapping stopped suddenly. For a moment, everything was deathly still. I felt a chill run up my spine, the hairs on the back of my neck standing up as if someone or something was watching me. I pushed the door open with a creak that reverberated through the emptiness. The room was vast, filled with old furniture, broken medical equipment, and worn mattresses that had long since lost their shape. The room smelled of rot and something else, something far worse. As I stepped further in, I felt it. The air in this room was different. It was thick, almost suffocating. The silence was unbearable. I took another step forward, and then I saw it. At the far end of the room, a woman was sitting on the floor, her back turned to me. She wore an old hospital gown, ragged and torn in places. Her hair was matted and dirty, hanging in tangled clumps around her face. Her hands were clasped in front of her, trembling, and she was rocking back and forth, softly whispering something to herself. "Hey, are you all right?" I called out, my voice shaking slightly. She didn't respond. I took a cautious step forward, unsure of what to do. Something about her seemed off, her movements were too jerky, too erratic. As I took another step, she suddenly froze. The room fell silent, the air growing colder. The woman's head snapped around to face me. Her eyes, they were wide to wide, her pupils, so dilated they were nearly gone, swallowed by the whites of her eyes. A sharp, chilling gasp escaped her lips, like she had been holding her breath for years. Her mouth parted, but instead of speaking, a long guttural scream tore through her throat, a scream so loud and full of pain that it shook me to my core. I froze, unable to move. The woman's scream filled the room, echoing against the walls, drowning out everything else. My heart raced, and I knew, deep down, that this wasn't a normal person. This wasn't just some patient who had been forgotten. This was something much darker, something twisted by the horrors that had occurred within these walls. Suddenly, she lunged at me, moving faster than I thought possible. I stumbled back, trying to raise my weapon, but before I could react, she was on top of me, her cold, clammy hands grabbing at my chest, pulling me down. Her nails scraped against my skin, digging in with an unnatural strength. I shoved her off, scrambling backward, my breath coming in ragged gasps. My flashlight fell to the ground, casting a weak, trembling light on her face as she grinned at me. Her teeth were yellow and jagged, like they had been worn down over years of gnashing, and her smile was too wide, stretching far beyond what was natural. "Help me," she whispered, her voice suddenly soft and pleading, but the words were followed by an eerie, mocking laugh. "Help me, and you'll never leave." I backed away, my legs shaking beneath me, my mind reeling from the horror of what I had just seen. There was something wrong with her, something more than just a broken mind. This place, this hospital, it had broken them all. Whatever had happened here, whatever had been done to these people, it had left a stain, a dark mark on the building and on the people who were once trapped within its walls. I reached the door, my hand desperately fumbling for the handle, but it wouldn't open. The woman's voice came again, low and guttural. "You're mine now." A shadow passed in front of me, blocking my escape. My pulse raced as I turned, my eyes landing on the figure in front of the door. It was another patient, or at least, that's what I thought at first. But then I realized this wasn't human. Its face was a twisted, featureless mask, its body stretched unnaturally tall, its limbs long and thin like they didn't belong. The thing's mouth was open wide, too wide, showing rows of sharp, serrated teeth. I slammed into the door again, this time with all my force. It gave way with a violent creak, and I bolted into the hallway, my heart hammering in my chest. I didn't stop running until I was outside, gasping for air, my hands slick with sweat, the sounds of the building still ringing in my ears. I don't know what happened in that hospital. I don't know who or what I encountered that night. But I do know this: I will never go back. The old hospital isn't just a building, it's a trap, a place where the broken are left to linger. It holds their ghosts, their torment, and now, I am part of that torment too. Every night since, I hear the whispers. I feel them watching me, waiting for me to come back. And one day, I know, they will take me. The place never lets go, and I'll never be free. The call came through at 3:00 a.m. It was a routine one, or at least, it was supposed to be. Unit 17, we've got a report of a disturbance at the old Hillview Asylum. Neighbors are hearing sounds, lights flickering. No immediate danger, but we need someone to check it out. Hillview had been shut down for decades, a relic of a time when mental health care was a cruel and unethical affair. I'd heard all the stories about what went on there, how some of the patients had never been properly discharged, their names erased, their lives forgotten, but it was just a building now, empty, abandoned, at least that's what I told myself. ID worked the late shift long enough to know that silence in this town often meant trouble. So, I grabbed my flashlight and gear, and without a second thought, I drove to the outskirts of town where the hospital loomed like a dark monument to the past. The place was just as eerie as the stories suggested. The road leading to Hillview was lined with overgrown trees, their branches twisting toward the sky like gnarled hands reaching for the moon. The moment I turned onto the hospital's property, the air seemed to change thicker, colder, even the engine of my patrol car seemed to groan louder in the oppressive silence. I parked near the front gate, which had been knocked off its hinges years ago. As I stepped out, the air was biting cold, the fog clinging to the ground in waves. The hospital itself was a giant, crumbling structure, windows shattered, walls cracked with age, and a sense of rot clinging to it like an odor that wouldn't go away. I approached the entrance carefully. The large doors, once imposing, were now barely standing, cracked open just enough for someone to slip through. I hesitated, looking around. No signs of anyone nearby, just the sound of my boots crunching on the gravel, echoing in the silence. "Hello," I called, but my voice bounced back at me, swallowed by the vast emptiness of the building. No response, just the distant creak of the building settling in the cold. I pushed open the door, the hinges squealing in protest. Inside, the air was stale, thick with the scent of mildew and old paper. The faintest flicker of light from a broken ceiling bulb cast long shadows on the walls. I pulled my flashlight from my belt, the beam cutting through the darkness as I stepped into the hallway. The floors were uneven, some places caved in from the years of neglect. The once white walls had yellowed with age, graffiti scrawled in places, marking the building like some forgotten place of terror. I moved deeper into the heart of the asylum, drawn by the strange feeling that something wasn't right. The quiet was unsettling, unnerving, and then I heard a sound. Soft at first, like a shuffle. A dragging noise, something moving slowly, deliberately. My skin prickled. I rounded a corner and froze. There, in the distance, a figure was standing in the middle of the hallway. Its back was turned to me, and it was motionless, almost blending into the shadow. I could barely make out the shape, but the slow, steady movement of its head, as if it was sensing me, made my blood run cold. "Who's there?" I demanded, my hand gripping my radio, but no answer came. Instead, the figure turned, its face illuminated for a brief moment by my flashlight. The sheer horror of it hit me like a punch to the gut. It wasn't a person, the face, if you could even call it, that was hollow, with eyes that seemed to stretch too far into its skull. Its mouth hung open, but the skin around it had been pulled tight, exposing teeth that were too sharp, too large for anything human. The thing didn't blink, just stared at me with those wide, empty eyes. And its hands. They were long, thin, and twitching, as though it was still trying to figure out how to move. "Get out," it rasped, the voice coming not from its mouth, but from deep within its throat, as if multiple voices were layered on top of one another. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I didn't know if I was frozen in place by fear or something more sinister. Before I could react, the thing lunged at me, its limbs stretching unnaturally, its hands reaching for my throat. I didn't know how it moved so fast. One moment it was standing there, the next it was almost on top of me. I dodged, instinct kicking in as I managed to grab the side of the doorframe, throwing myself to the side. I barely had time to react as I scrambled to my feet. It was still coming at me, but this time, I pulled my firearm. "Stay back," I shouted, my voice shaky. But the thing just kept coming, its twisted smile stretching unnaturally as it grew closer. Closer. I fired once. Then again, the first shot hit it square in the chest, but it didn't flinch. The second shot tore through its shoulder, but the thing didn't even seem to register the injury. It was like it was immune to pain. "Help me," it whispered, now with a voice that seemed to echo from the depths of the building itself. The voices behind it, the whispers of hundreds, maybe thousands, began to fill the air, their cries and screams crawling beneath my skin. "Help me." I fired again, this time hitting it in the head. It stumbled back, its head snapping at an unnatural angle, but it didn't stop, it just kept coming. That voice, those words, "Help me." It was only then that I realized I wasn't just fighting one thing. I was fighting something much worse. A whole mass of trapped souls, bound by whatever horrors had been done here. They were all trapped in the asylum, bound to it. And the thing in front of me, the one that spoke, was one of them. I ran. I didn't think. I didn't stop. I just ran. The hallway seemed endless, stretching further the more I sprinted. The air grew heavier, suffocating. My footsteps echoed in the halls, louder and louder, until I swore I could hear others chasing me. Not just footsteps, but the faint whispers. the scraping of nails against metal. I reached the front doors, throwing them open, nearly falling out of them into the cold night air. My body was shaking, my mind numb. The moonlight outside felt like a distant relief, but it wasn't enough. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was following me. Something was still in the building, waiting for the next person to step inside, to let it out. I drove away, never looking back, but the whispers haven't stopped. Every night I hear them in my mind. Help me. They're always there, just beneath the surface. The asylum was abandoned, but it's not empty. Whatever it is that remains inside, whatever was twisted and corrupted by years of suffering, it's still there. And it's waiting for someone else to make the mistake of stepping inside. I've learnt one thing since that night. You can escape the building, but you can never escape what's inside. And it will always call to you. Always. The call came through just after 2:00 a.m., and something about it made my skin crawl even before I had all the details. Unit 34, we've got a disturbance at the old Ashford Mental Hospital. Neighbors reporting lights flickering, loud noises. We need someone to check it out. Ashford, I knew the name all too well, an infamous relic of the past, a place where stories were told in whisper stories of experiments, cruel treatments, and patients that had vanished without a trace. It had been shut down decades ago, and since then, it had fallen into ruin. There was nothing left but an abandoned building standing in the middle of overgrown fields, casting long shadows under the moonlight. The thought of stepping foot in that place made me uneasy, but I was a law enforcement officer, and when the call came, you answer, I grabbed my flashlight and gear, not bothering to call for backup. I was used to handling things on my own. Still, as I drove toward the hospital, a sense of dread crept up my spine. The fog that clung to the ground seemed unnaturally thick, almost like it was trying to keep me from reaching my destination. The Ashford Mental Hospital was just as I remembered it, looming at the edge of town. Dark and oppressive, like some ancient beast waiting to swallow anyone who got too close. The rusted iron gates creaked as I pushed them open, and the overgrown path leading to the building was barely visible in the mist. As I approached the front door, I noticed the faint flickering of light inside, just like the report had said. The building, though abandoned, seemed to stir to life. My flashlight barely cut through the thick darkness, and every step I took seemed to echo louder than the last. The door was partially open, hanging off its hinges like the rest of the structure. I hesitated before stepping inside, the overwhelming stench of decay hitting me immediately. The stale air, the mildew, and something far worse, it was as if the building itself had absorbed years of suffering. "Hello," I called, my voice sounding strangely hollow in the cavernous space. No response, just the faint hum of the flickering lights overhead. I moved cautiously through the hallway, my boots crunching on debris as I scanned the area with my flashlight. As I reached the end of the hall, I heard its footsteps, soft at first, like someone was walking behind me, just out of sight. I spun around, the beam of light slicing through the dark, but there was nothing, no one. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, my senses alert, but my mind was screaming at me to turn around and leave. I didn't. I pressed forward, against my better judgment. The noise came again, this time, louder, closer. I could feel it in my bones, the thumping of feet moving quickly across the floor. I turned another corner, and that's when I saw it, a shadow darting across the wall. It wasn't just the flickering light, it was too fast, too erratic, and then it stopped. There, in the doorway to a room ahead, stood a figure. I froze. It wasn't a person, not fully, at least. It was too tall, too gaunt, its body twisted at strange angles, as though it was built wrong. Its skin was pulled tight against its bones, pale, almost sickly white. The eyes were wide, hollow, and empty, like they had never seen the light of day. Its mouth was open, but there was no sound, only the faint, wet rasp of breath. For a moment, everything went still. The flickering lights above, the scratching noises in the walls, they all faded away, replaced by the eerie silence that filled the space. Then the figure moved, its head twisted slowly, and I saw a grin, a smile so wide, it should have been impossible. "Help me," it whispered. Its voice was a soft rasp, but it carried through the room like it was more than just a sound. It felt like something was inside me, scratching at my own thoughts. I couldn't move. My body was frozen in place, my hand still holding the flashlight, its beam shaking as I tried to focus. The figure took one step forward, and then another, its arms stretched toward me in unnatural angles. I was still too stunned to react when its long fingers grazed my arm as cold, unnaturally cold. I recoiled, snapping out of the trance. But before I could turn to run, the room grew colder. I could see my breath in the air, thick and white. The figure didn't stop, it kept coming toward me, each step slow, deliberate, as though it was savoring my fear. "Please," it whispered again, this time louder, more urgent. "Help me. Please don't leave me." I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, my legs shaking as I backed away. But the room seemed to stretch farther. The walls closed in around me, the darkness thickening. No matter how far I moved, I couldn't escape. I heard something, a creak, a low groan, then a voice, softer but still clear in the thick silence. "You'll never leave. None of us ever do." I turned. A second figure appeared, this one sitting on the floor, its back hunched, in an impossible arch. Its eyes, just as hollow, stared at me with an intensity that I couldn't understand. It didn't move, but its presence was as overwhelming as the air in the room. Then another, and another, all scattered across the room, their eyes trained on me. All of them whispered the same thing: "Help me." The walls of the hospital seemed to groan, as if the entire building was alive with the cries of the trapped souls. The whispers, the rasping, the flickering lights, it all became too much. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. I had to get out. I turned and bolted toward the door, but before I could make it, the door slammed shut. As if the building itself had decided I wasn't leaving. The temperature plummeted, and I felt the presence of something else, a cold, malevolent force. The last thing I saw before I hit the door again was the figure from before, smiling wider, its grin stretching impossibly far. Then the world went dark. I woke up outside, on the cold, wet ground. I didn't remember how I got there. My flashlight lay beside me, still glowing faintly, but there was no sign of the building, no sign of the figures. The fog was gone, replaced by a still, unsettling quiet. The next morning, I went to check the hospital again, driven by some compulsion I couldn't understand. But when I arrived, there was nothing. No broken gates, no flickering lights, no figures lurking in the windows. Ashford had been empty for decades, and yet, somehow, it felt like I had left part of myself behind. I never spoke of what happened that night, never mentioned the figures or the whispers. Some things, I realized, should never be explained. But I knew the truth. The hospital wasn't just haunted, it was alive, hungry for anyone foolish enough to step inside. And it would keep calling, keep waiting, until someone answered again. It's not the building you should be afraid of. It's what's inside it that never leaves. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Each of your stories adds another layer to our growing community of horror enthusiasts. And if you think someone else might enjoy a good scare, do you want to forget to share this video with them? Stay tuned for more spine-chilling stories, and remember, sometimes the scariest tales are the ones that could happen to any of us. Thank you again for watching. I will see you in the next video if you dare.